Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 868th night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Nur al-Din was delighted with the girl's verses, and he swayed from side to side for drunkenness, and fell a-praising her, and saying, O luteness, to us inclined, and stole our wits bemused with wine, and said to her lute, The Lord bade us discourse by voice divine. When she heard him thus improvise, the girl gazed at him with loving eyes, and redoubled in passion, and desire for him increased upon her. And indeed she marvelled at his beauty and loveliness, symmetry and grace, so that she could not contain herself, but took the lute in lap again, and sang these couplets. He blames me for casting on him my sight, and parts from me bearing my life and sprite. He repels me, but keens what my heart endures, as though Allah himself had in spite the white. I portrayed his portrait in palm of hand, and cried to mine eyes, Weep your doleful plight. For neither shall eyes of me spy like this, nor my heart have patience to bear its blight. Wherefore will I tear thee from breast, O heart, as one who regards him with jealous spite. And when say I, O heart, be consoled for pine, 'tis that heart to none other shall e'er incline. Nur al-Din wondered at the charms of her verse, and the elegance of her expression, and the sweetness of her voice, and the eloquence of her speech, and his wit fled for stress of love, and longing, and ecstasy, and distraction, so that he could not refrain from her a single moment, but bent to her and strained her to his bosom, and she in like manner bowed her form over his, and abandoned herself to his embrace, and bussed him between the eyes. And then he kissed her on the mouth, and played with her at kisses, after the manner of the billing of does. And she met him with like warmth, and did with him as she was done by, till the others were distracted and rose to their feet. Whereupon Nur al-Din was ashamed, and held his hand from her. Then she took her lute, and preluding thereon in manifold modes, lastly returned to the first, and sang these couplets. A moon, when he bends, him those eyes lay bare, a brand that gars gazing gazelle despair. A king, rarest charms are the host of him, and his lance, like shape men with cane compare. Were his softness of sides to his heart transferred, his friend had not suffered such cark and care. Ah, for the hardest heart, and for the softest sides, why not that to these altar make here go there? O thou, who accusest my love excuse, take eternal and leave me the transient share. When Nur al-Din heard the sweetness of her voice, and the rareness of her verse, he inclined to her for delight, and could not contain himself for excess of wonderment. So he recited these couplets. Methought she was the forenoon sun until she donned the veil, but lit she fire in vitals mine shall flaring fierce and high. How had it hurt her as she deemed, return my poor salam with fingertips, or in vouchsafe one little wink of eye? The cavalier who spied her face was wholly stupefied by charms that glorify the place, and every charm outvie. Be this the fair who makes thee pine and long for love lease? Indeed thou art excused. This is my fairest she, quoth I, who shot me with a shaft of looks, nor deigns to rue my woes of strangerhood and broken heart, and love I must abye. I rose a morn with vanquished heart, to longing love a prey, and weep I through the live-long day, and all the night I cry. The girl marvelled at his eloquence and elegance, and taking her lute, smote thereon with the goodliest of performance, repeating all the melodies, and sang these couplets. By the light of thy face, O thou life, O my sprite, I ne'er leave thy love for despair or delight. When art cruel, thy vision stands hard to my side, and the thought of thee haunts me with far from sight. Oh, whose sadness my glance, I'll be weeting that I no love but thy love will be ever requite. Thy cheeks are of rose, and thy lip dews are wine. Say, Wilt grudge them to us in this charming sight? Hereat Nur al-Din was gladdened with extreme gladness, and wondered with the utmost wonder. So he answered her verse with these couplets. The sun yellowed not in the murk glow line, but lay pearl in veiled neath horizon chine. Nor it showed its crest to the eyes of morn, but took refuge from parting with morning shine. Take my teardrops that trickle as chain on chain, and they'll tell my case with the clearest sight. And my tears be likened to Nile flood, like Malik's flooded flat, be this love, O mine. Quoth she, bring thy riches. Quoth I, take them. And thy sleep? Yes, take it from my lids of eyne. When the girl heard Nur al-Din's words, and noted the beauty of his eloquence, her senses fled, and her wits were dazed, and love of him gat upon her heart. So she pressed him to her bosom, and fell to kissing him like the billing of doves, whilst he returned her caresses with successive kisses. But preeminence appertaineth to precedence. When she had made an end of kissing, she took the lute, and recited these couplets. Alas! Alack, and well away for blamers call me, whether or not I make my moan, or plead, or show no plea, or spurner of my love, I ne'er of thee so hard would deem, that I of thee should be despised, of thee my property. I want at lovers' love to rail, and for their passion chide, but now I fain debase myself to all who would rail at thee. Yea, only yesterday I want all amorous to blame, but now I pardon hearts that pine for passion, ecstasy. And my stress of part stowing on me so heavy weight, at morning prayer to him I'll cry, in thy name, O Ali. And also these two couplets. His lover said, unless he deign to give us all a drink of wine, a fine old wine, his lips deal in their purity. We to the Lord of threefold worlds will pray to grant our prayer, and all exclaim with single cry, in thy name, O Ali. Nur al-Din, hearing these lines and their rhyme, marveled at the fluency of her tongue, and thanked her, praising her grace and passing seductiveness. And the damsel, delighted at his praise, arose without stay or delay, and doffing that was upon her of her outer dress and trinkets, till she was free of all encumbrance, sat on his knees, and kissed him between the eyes, and on his cheek mole. Then she gave him all she had put off, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 869th night, she pursued. It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the girl gave to Nur al-Din all she had doffed, saying, O beloved of my heart, in very sooth the gift is after the measure of the giver. So he accepted this from her, and gave it back to her, and kissed her on the mouth, and cheeks, and eyes. When this was ended and done, for naught is durable saving the living, the eternal provider of the peacock and the owl. Nur al-Din rose from the seance, and stood upon his feet, because the darkness was now fallen, and the stars shone out. Whereupon quoth the damsel to him, Whither away, O my lord? And quoth he, To my father's home. Then the sons of the merchants conjured him to night with them, but he refused, and mounting his she-mule, rode without stopping till he reached his parents' house, where his mother met him, and said to him, O my son, what hath kept thee away till this hour? By Allah, thou hast troubled myself and thy sire by thine absence from us, and our hearts have been occupied with thee. Then she came up to him to kiss him on the mouth, and smelling the fumes of wine, said, O my son, how is it that after prayer and worship thou hast become a wine-bibber, and a rebel against him to whom being creation and commandment? But Nur al-Din threw himself down on the bed and lay there. Presently in came his sire, and said, What aileth Nur al-Din to lie thus? And his mother answered, 'Twould seem his head acheth for the air of the garden. So Taj al-Din went up to his son, and asked him of his ailment, and saluted him, and smelt the reek of wine. Now the merchant loved not wine-drinkers, so he said to Nur al-Din, Woe to thee, O my son! Is folly come to such a pass with thee, that thou drinkest wine? When Nur al-Din heard his sire say this, he raised his hand, being yet in his drunkenness, and dealt him a buffet, when by decree of the decreer the blow lit on his father's right eye, which rolled down his cheek, whereupon he fell a swoon and lay there a while. They sprinkled rose water on him till he recovered, when he would have beaten his son, but the mother withheld him, and he swore by the oath of divorce from his wife that as soon as morning morrowed he would assuredly cut off his son's right hand. When she heard her husband's words, her breast was straitened, and she feared for her son, and ceased not to soothe and appease his sire till sleep overcame him. Then she waited till moonrise, when she went into her son, whose drunkenness had now departed from him, and said to him, O Nur al-Din, what is this foul deed thou didst with thy sire? He asked, and what did I do with him? And she answered him, Thou dealest him a buffet on the right eye, and struckest it out, so that it rolled down his cheek on the right eye, and he has sworn by the divorce oath that as soon as morning shall morrow, he will without fail cut off thy right hand. Nur al-Din repented him of what he had done, when as repentance profiteth him not. And his mother said to him, O my son, this penitence will not profit thee, nor will aught avail thee, but that thou arise forthwith, and seek safety in flight. Go forth the house privily, and take refuge with one of thy friends, and there what Allah shall do await. For he changeth case after case, and state upon state. Then she opened a chest, and taking out a purse of 100 dinars, said, O my son, take these dinars, and provide thy wants therewith, and when they are at an end, O my son, send and lot me know thereof, that I may send thee other than this, and at that same time convey to me news of thyself privily. Haply Allah will decree thee relief, and thou shalt return to thy home. And she farewelled him, and wept passing sore, naught could be more. Thereupon Nur al-Din took the purse of gold, and was about to go forth, when he espied a great purse containing 1,000 dinars, which his mother had forgotten by the side of the chest. He took this also, and binding the 2 purses about his middle, set out before dawn, threading the streets in the direction of Bullock. When he arrived, when day broke, and all creatures arose, attesting the unity of Allah the Opener, and went forth each of them upon his several businesses, to win that which Allah had him allotted. Reaching Bullock, he walked on along the river bank till he sighted a ship with her gangplank out, and her 4 anchors made fast to the land. The folk were going up into her, and coming down from her, and Nur al-Din, seeing some sailors there standing, asked them whither they were bound, and they answered, To Rosetta City. Quoth he, Take me with you. And quoth they, Well, come, and welcome to thee, and to thee an old goodly buy. So he betook himself forthright to the market, and buying what he needed of vivers and bedding and covering, returned to the port, and went on board the ship, which was ready to sail, and tarried with him but a little while before she weighed anchor, and fared on without stopping, till he reached Rosetta, where Nur al-Din saw a small boat going to Alexandria. So he embarked in it, and traversing the sea arm of Rosetta, fared on till he came to a bridge called Al-Jamah, where he landed, and entered Alexandria by the gate called the Gate of the Lote Tree. Allah protected him, so that none of those who stood on guard at the gate saw him, and he walked on till he entered the city. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 870th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Nur al-Din entered Alexandria, he found it in a city goodly of pleasurances, delightful to its inhabitants, and inviting to inhabit therein. Winter had fared from it with the cold, and prime was come to it with its roses. Its flowers were kindly ripe, and well forth its rills. Indeed, it was a city goodly of ordinance and disposition. Its folk were of the best of men, and when the gates thereof were shut, its folk were safe. And it was even as it was said in these couplets. Quoth I to a comrade one day, A man of good speech and rare, describe Alexandria. Quoth he, 'Tis a march town fair. Quoth I, Is there living therein? And he, And the wind blow there. Or, as saith one of these poets, Alexandria's frontier, whose dew of lips are sweet and clear, how fair the coming to it is, so one therein no raven spear. Nur al-Din walked about the city, and ceased not walking till he came to the merchant's bazaar, whence he passed on the mart of the money changers, and so on in turn to the markets of the confectioners and the fruiterers and the druggists, marveling as he went at the city, for that the nature of its qualities according with its name. As he walked in the druggist's bazaar, behold, an old man came from his shop, and saluting him, took him by the hand and carried him to his home. And Nur al-Din saw a fair by-street swept and sprinkled, whereupon the zephyr blew and made pleasantness pervaded, and the leaves of the trees overshaded it. Therein stood 3 houses, and at the upper end a mansion, whose foundations were firm, sunk in the water, and its walls towered to the confines of the sky. They had swept the space before it, and they had sprinkled it freshly, so it exhaled the fragrance of flowers, borne on the zephyr, which breathed upon the place, and the scent met there who approached it, on such wise as it were one of the gardens of paradise. And as they had cleaned and cooled the by-street's head, so was the end of it, with marble spread. The sheikh carried Nur al-Din into the house, and setting somewhat of food before him, ate with his guest. When they had made an end of eating, the druggist said to him, "When camest thou hither from Cairo?" Said Nur al-Din, replied, "This very night, O my father." Quoth the old man, "What is thy name?" And quoth he, "Ali Nur al-Din." Said the druggist, "O my son, O Nur al-Din, be the triple divorce incumbent on me, and thou leave me so long as thou abidest in this city, and I will set thee apart a place wherein thou mayest dwell." Nur al-Din asked, "O my lord the sheikh, let me know more of thee." And the other answered, "Know, O my son, that some years ago I went to Cairo with merchandise, which I sold there and bought other, and I had occasion for 1,000 dinars, so thy sire Taj al-Din weighed them out for me, all unknowing me, and would take no written word of me, but had patience with me till I returned hither, and sent him the amount by one of my servants, together with a gift. I saw thee whilst thou wast little, and if it please Allah the Most High, I will repay thee somewhat of the kindness thy father did me." When Nur al-Din heard the old man's story, he showed joy, and pulling out with a smile the purse of 1,000 dinars, gave it to his host, the sheikh, and said to him, "Take charge of this deposit for me against I buy me somewhat of the merchandise whereon to trade." Then he abode some time in Alexandria city, taking his pleasure every day in its thoroughfares, eating and drinking and indulging himself with mirth and merriment, till he had made an end of the 100 dinars he had kept by way of spending money. Whereupon he repaired to the old druggist to take of him somewhat of the 1,000 dinars to spend, but found him not in his shop, and took a seat therein to await his return. He sat there gazing right and left, and amusing himself with watching the merchants and passers-by. And as he was thus engaged, behold, there came into the bazaar a Persian riding on a she-mule, and carrying behind him a damsel, as she were argent of aloe free, or a fish baltu in mimic sea, or a doe gazelle on desert lea. Her face outshone the sun and shine, and she had witching eyne, and breasts of ivory, white teeth of marguerite, slender waist and sides dimpled deep, and calves like tails of fat sheep. And indeed she was perfect in beauty and loveliness, elegant stature, and symmetrical grace, even as saith one describing her, "'Twas as by will of her she was create, nor short nor long, but beauty's mould and mate. Rose blushes reddest when she sees those eyes, and fruits the bough those marvel charms amate. Moon is her favour, musk the scent of her, branch is her shape, she passeth man's estate. 'Tis eyne as were she cast in freshest pearl, and every limblet shows a moon innate." Presently the Persian lighted down from his she-mule, and making the damsel also dismount, loudly summoned the broker, and said to him as soon as he came, "Take this damsel, and cry for her sale in the market." So he took her, and leading her to the middlemost of the bazaar, disappeared for a while, and presently he returned with a stool of ebony, inlaid with ivory, and setting it upon the ground, seated her thereon. Then he raised her veil, and discovered a face, as it were a meridian targe, or a cluster of pearls, and indeed she was like the full moon, when it filleth on the 14th night, accomplished in brilliant beauty, as saith the poet, "Vied the full moon for folly with her face, but was eclipsed and split for rage full sore. And if the spring ban with her content, perish her hands who load a fuel bore. And how well saith another, say to the fair in the rotten vale, how was made that monk-like worshipper ale? Light a veil, and light a face under it, made the host of darkness to fly from bale. And when came my glance to steal look at cheek, with a meteor shaft the guard made me quail. Then said the broker to the merchants, how much do you bid for the union pearl of the diver, and prize quarry of the fowler? Quoth one, she is mine for 100 dinars. And another said 200, and the third 300. And they ceased not bidding one against the other, till they made her price 950 dinars. And there the bidding stopped, awaiting acceptance and consent. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my tellings of this tale for today, till it be morrow.